When I think about Picasso, I think about tradition. I think about modern masters. I think about the people who are held up as the artists and as the definition of what art is and what art means. I think our identities give us context for what we're seeing. It gives us reference. It gives us background and experience for how we interpret something. And I think for me, when I look at Picasso's work, the references that I see often relate to African traditions of art, particularly the sort of traditions that he used in his masks that draw from African art. Learning more about his legacy as I became a part of this show, I learned that he got lots of different references from lots of different people. What is a challenge around this stuff is that it doesn't go acknowledged. It's one thing to reference and be inspired, but when you disconnect yourself from that reference or you don't reference that tradition or cite where it came from or where your inspiration came from, that to me is erasure. These artists, Black and African artists, are seen as primitive. They're seen as, their work is not seen as complex or complicated, but you have these people who are seen as, again, traditional masters of art borrowing from these so-called primitive traditions. And so it just really puts into perspective what we think of as modern, what we think of as primitive, what we think of as valuable. And often African art, because it's seen in this particular way, it's something that people can steal from and not acknowledge because it's primitive and it's these other things. So I think that's what happens. And it's like, actually, no, these things are very futurist. They're very future forward, future thinking, or they bring in traditions of other times and past and present. And then also when you think about African art, it's very contextual, it's very community-based. It's not just for looking at, it's not just a visual culture, it's very much a culture that's embodied and spiritual in a lot of different ways. Deeming African art and Black people and African people as uncivilized, as pre-civilized, before time, outside of time, and so they are left off of the timeline. So for example, people like Romare Bearden, who's an amazing Black collage artist, who's, is not as well known as Picasso, but was his contemporary. I think it's okay to celebrate him. I think he has done really amazing work and he has created a tradition and a lineage of work that people look to and that is amazing and beautiful and technically. So I do think he should be acknowledged, but it needs to be a full and holistic acknowledgement of all of it. And again, I think a celebration like this is an opportunity to bring in those other perspectives and those other ways of viewing a complicated person. We don't see the past as dead or static or as something that you can no longer touch or visit, right? We see his work as a part of the future and the present as well. It's not just locked in the past. So I think, that's how we can re-envision moving forward.